The Anton Savage Show on Today FM. April is Trade-In, Trade-Up Allowance Month at your Toyota dealer. Toyota, the best built cars in the world.
Bit of very good news if you are a Blur fan. Blur is in the process of releasing its first album in quite a while. The album is entitled The Magic Whip. It's going to be on release on Friday week on the 24th of April. And one of the things that is happening at the same time as the release is there's a whole lot of stuff and information about how the album was created. And we discovered in reading through all of this and looking at all of this that Damon Albarn has something weird in common with Matt Cooper, because in the same way as Matt Cooper from The Last Word here on Today FM went off to North Korea with Dennis Rodman and spent 2 weeks there following him around and watching him play basketball, Damon Albarn went to North Korea as part of the genesis of this album. Damon, why North Korea?
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. What a beautiful day it is.
Isn't it nice?
Yeah. Really, really nice day.
North Korea, discuss.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, the weather was like this when I was in North Korea, so it was very clement.
But it's not like Bali. You don't say, do you know where I'll go next Tuesday? I'll go to North Korea. It takes a lot of effort to get there.
I'll tell you why. I mean, it actually had nothing to do with this record. I went there because I've been working for a while on a musical for the National Theatre here, based on Alice in Wonderland. I mean, it's very loosely based on that. It's called Wonder.Land. It's starting at the Manchester International Festival in a couple of months' time. But I went there because when I started thinking about writing music for Alice, I was like, well, I really need something that's going to give me that sense of going down the rabbit hole. And I couldn't really think of a better place to go than North Korea, in the sense that, you know, once you cross the border, you are in a magical place, in the sense that everyone's sort of under a spell. And
were you pursued everywhere? Because Matt from the station said that he was followed all the time.
You're assigned government sort of handlers. There's only one hotel where you can stay, and it's on an island in the middle of a big river in Pyongyang, and you're not allowed to leave. You're allowed to leave, but you're only allowed to leave with your government handlers. So you're essentially a sort of you're a prisoner.
It doesn't sound like the kind of environment that you would naturally associate with getting the musical creative juices flowing.
Well, I just wanted that. I wanted to experience the atmosphere of being, you know, in the court of the Red Queen. I don't know. It was. I just felt it was the right place to go, and I'd always had a fascination about the place. I mean, how could possibly people live under with such a sort of an insanely kind of distant grasp of what was going on in the rest of the world? You know, I mean, it's an extraordinary place, but I did find the people strangely sort of charming.
And it's an interesting part of the whole genesis of the new album, Magic Whip.
I mean, sorry, I've completely gone off track there, but you did start with that. So, I mean, I could talk for hours about North Korea because it's an extra. I mean, the song on the album that's entitled Pyongyang is about a day that I spent going to the mausoleum of the great leaders, which, I mean, essentially everyone who goes, and Matt would have done the same thing, everyone who goes to North Korea has to do exactly the same thing. And, you know, you're subjected to hours of propaganda. I mean, you just have to stand there and take it, you know, and sometimes it's so nonsensical, it's hard not to laugh. But the mausoleum is one of the wonders of the world. It's a macabre wonder, but it's this vast palace dedicated to the two coffins, right in the centre of this vast palace of the great leaders, and it's just one of the most mad things I've ever seen in my life. It's so grand, and yet it's so camp in a way.
And do you leave the place feeling depressed, or do you leave it intrigued? Do you want to go back?
You leave the place feeling utterly bewildered. Which is a good place, a good state of mind, if you want to write about stuff. I mean, bewilderment is a good subject.
Well, did I read somewhere, or was this a myth, that there was one Blur album that was in part created because you ended up on a cruise for the elderly in Iceland?
I decided I'd had a recurring dream as a child of a black sand beach. And I was sitting in 1996 watching a program in a hotel room, and it happened to be about Iceland. And at one point, the presenter was walking on a volcanic beach, and I suddenly connected it with this childhood dream, and saw it as a sign that I must go to Iceland. And in a way, I wanted to get away from the whole Britpop madness as well. So I sort of went with a typewriter and a guitar to Iceland, and I didn't know anything about it, and I just put myself into a Saga hotel. where I spent about 3 weeks.
For those unfamiliar, maybe explain what Saga is, because I don't know.
I think that's where where the myth has grown from. Saga hotel. Saga hotels are for a hotel. A holiday company that organises trips for sort of retired people. Essentially.
Did you play much bingo when you were out there?
I didn't. No, but I discovered that the Icelanders drink as much as we do, if not more. But I mean, it changed my life going to Iceland. I mean, it really was the tonic I needed at the time, and it was the genesis of the 5th Blur record entitled Blur.
Oh, Blur! It wasn't written in Iceland, though, was it, or was that where you got the idea?
A lot of it, like Beetlebum, I recorded it out there as well.
Well, we do then have to talk. I mean, our tour of the world continues, because we have to talk about Hong Kong.
It's not the first Blur record that's been made in another town, basically.
We need to take a break, Damon. Will you stay with us and we'll talk to you more after the break?
Yeah.
The Anton Savage Show on Today FM. April is Trade-In, Trade-Up Allowance Month at your Toyota dealer. Toyota, the best built cars in the world.
You're listening to the Anton Savage Show and our illustrated travel guide to the planet with Damon Albarn from Blur. Damon, take us to Hong Kong.
Sure, Hong Kong. I mean, I can say, wherever you want to go, really.
Well, let's do Hong Kong, because it does relate to
I haven't been to India or Siberia yet.
Well, that's albums, 9 and 10? The Magic Whip, it found life in Hong Kong.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, it sort of had to be, because, I mean, the story behind this record, I mean, I didn't really imagine that we would ever make another record. It wasn't sort of something that I think any of us had planned, but we found ourselves in Hong Kong a few years ago, as you do, and we had 5 days with nothing to do. We'd had a gig cancelled through some bizarre circumstance in Japan, and, we had the choice of either flying back to London or staying there, because we were going to play Jakarta at the end of that week. And we thought, well, just do something positive with our time. And we booked a really little crappy studio with no air conditioning, and it was super hot by this point. It's like June. It's really humid. It's like in the high 90s and horrible, really. We just plotted up there for 5 days. I had lots of bits and bobs in my garage band to play, so we took each little idea and then we just jam it for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, have a break, have a cup of tea, and then move on to something else. We didn't even listen back to anything we'd done. So it was this huge mass of very fluid music that we were left with. And at the end of the 5 days, it was like, well, that was fun, but we haven't really articulated anything, and we got on the plane to Jakarta, and then that was the end of that. And then everyone went off and did their own thing again.
And was it all friendly and the vibe was all good?
Yeah,
and it was all fun?
It was great. And in a way, I suppose the sessions reminded me of like really early days when we didn't have any money, and the only studio we could afford was a crappy little one, And I think in a way it was back to that spirit. Even though I don't think we were necessarily aware of it. And the nice thing about it was there was no pressure, because we didn't see it as like we're making a record. We just saw it as just having a laugh.
So who got the job of editing down 40 hours of tape?
So this sprawling mess is left for like 18 months, and I've kind of forgotten about it by this point, and I'm doing other stuff. And then Graham rings me up and says, "Look, I'm not doing anything at the moment, and I've been thinking about all of this stuff, and I'd really like to get in there and have a go at like sorting it out, editing it, adding a few bits." He wanted to do it, and I was like, "Well, that's amazing. You want to do that? That's brilliant." So he rang Stephen Street up, who'd worked with us on Part Life and Modern Life is Rubbish. Very, very old friend, but not someone that I'd ever imagined I'd work with again. And they went off and they spent like 3 or 4 weeks just hardcore editing. I mean, we're talking about, I don't know, six hours of music at least, I reckon. And, they edited it, and then they rang me up and it came down, and I was really nervous. It's like, if I don't like this, it's going to be a very awkward
yeah, thanks for the work, guys. It's terrible.
Couple of hours. But, track after track came up, and it just had my guide vocals from Hong Kong on it, so it was a bit all over the place. But you could hear that there was the work they'd done in that month was really good work. And I kind of realised that I had to sort of take the whole thing seriously again, and then I was sort of, well, how am I going to do this? I'm doing a musical at the moment. I'm on tour with my band, The Heavy Seas.
I know. I'll go to North Korea.
No, I'd already been to North Korea. Do you know what? That was the maddest month of my life. I went to North Korea, and then I flew down to Bamako in Mali to make a record called Maison des Jeunes for Africa Express, and then I flew to Lima to do a Blur gig. All in a month.
Not a bad month. Well, while we're touring the world again, we got a text in. Unsurprisingly, we've had a load of texts. Text in. Ask Damon, does he remember a night in the Dublin or Irish pub in Reykjavik back in 96-97? Damon arrived into the pub with the concert promoter Denny, whereby he introduced...
Oh, Denny, I remember Denny.
Damon to
he
our...
went to prison.
emailer, Keith. I worked in the pub, so I knew him well. Needless to say, good night was had. I just wanted to thank Damon for what happened a few days later. I was in the supermarket, and as it has happened, so was Damon. Damon ended up in front of me in the queue at the checkout, and the two girls there were starstruck. Funny thing was, as Damon left, he turned around to me and said, "All right, Keith, how's it going?" The face on the girls was priceless as they turned and looked at me, as the face that says, "Who the hell are you?" And he goes on to say, "I went off knowing what it feels like to be a bass player." Another one says, "Damon, I was at the last Blur gig."
Which is actually kind of, a sort of, there's a mad historic connection between Iceland and Ireland, really, isn't there? I mean, they used to have a penchant for grabbing your women.
They did. Half of their DNA is thanks to us.
Exactly.
Hi, Damon. I was at the last Blur gig in Kilmainham. It was absolutely brilliant. Another one saying, big fan for years. Literally grew up with Blur. Luckily, got to see you guys at Oxygen one year. Best gig I've ever been to. Oh, by the way, says the text, what does Damon think about the Russell Brand edit of Park Life? Do you love it?
Do I love it? It's Russell, isn't it?
It's very Russell.
As Noel says, he's a bit of a mitherer.
Damon, congratulations on the new album. The new Blur album is The Magic Whip, and after the 11 o'clock news, we'll be playing one of the tracks from it.
The Anton Savage Show on Today FM. April is Trade-In, Trade-Up Allowance Month at your Toyota dealer. Toyota, the best built cars in the world.